and I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, co-chairs. Pakistan aligns itself with the statement delivered by Italy on behalf of the Uniting for Consensus Group. Co-chairs, of the 5 interlinked clusters, the categories of membership is the one that is farthest from convergence. Evidently, this has been the main stumbling block to reform. A fair, equitable, and feasible compromise will need to be found in order to overcome this impasse. And many of the questions that you co-chairs have posed in your letter of 12th February and this morning also have their answers in a compromise, a middle ground that is fair and equitable for all, and that is practical and realistic and thus feasible. Such a compromise must also correspond to the agreed principles of reform. Enhanced representation should be democratic, more transparent, accountable, effective. We know all that. But are these mere words? Because if we are serious about these principles, we should put to test each of the various reform models against those principles and see how they perform. And here we see that the demand for individual permanent membership is clearly something that runs counter to these principles of reform. It simply fails to meet the test. And in particular, it violates the principle of sovereign equality, and therefore cannot be a basis for reform governed by those agreed principles. Then we also need to learn from the actual practice of the Council over the decades. We know what ails the Council, what is the root cause of the challenges facing the Council. The overwhelming majority of the UN membership recognizes that permanent membership and the veto are at the core of the Council's paralysis and inaction that we have witnessed too often over the years. For them, this is not a peripheral concern, it is the central fault line that undermines the Council's credibility and effectiveness. Where so much effort has gone into this reform debate, and at a time when multilateral system is under extreme stress, with calls for reform for a UN that is fit for purpose, the demand for special privileges must have no space in these discussions. Pakistan's position has been consistent and clear. New permanent members will not neutralize the inordinate influence of the existing permanent members. Rather, they risk entrenching and expanding it. Two wrongs cannot make a right, and a larger oligarchy is no antidote to an elite power club. A circle of permanence, even though expanded, will remain a closed circle. And no wonder some of the P5 are happy to expand this club primarily to protect their own outdated status in today's Council. Chairs, we believe that the best way to balance the unequal power of the 5 is through a more democratic and accountable approach, including a meaningful increase in elected non-permanent members. This would shift the internal balance of an expanded Council in favor of the wider membership and ensure that the required majority for the adoption of resolutions rests predominantly with elected members, thereby enhancing transparency, inclusivity, and accountability in the Council's decision-making process while preserving the principle of sovereign equality. Now, there is the African common position which we fully respect and understand. And my delegation has consistently stated that Africa's demand for permanent seats is on behalf of and for the entire region, and is therefore fundamentally different from other proposals that are divisive as they seek permanent membership for individual states. Co-chairs, coming to the concept of longer-term fixed regional seats, we acknowledge and appreciate your constructive efforts to bridge the differences between various positions. And this proposal, in essence, as we understand, confirms that the demand for new permanent members is not feasible, and that a middle ground needs to be explored based on a combination of medium terms, re-election and rotation for the seats allocated to the regions. Now, this is an interesting proposal, and any fresh ideas aimed at breaking the deadlock merit consideration. It would be useful to have more details on the various aspects of this proposal. A key consideration for us is that no proposal should evolve into de facto permanence, as it will not be in the interest of the wider membership. And we continue to believe that expansion of veto is neither desirable nor feasible. Any concept, in our view, must ensure genuine rotation and fair regional representation. That is possible only with a reasonable expansion in elected non-permanent, longer-term and regular two-year seats to cater to underrepresented regions and to accommodate the interests of sub-regional and cross-regional groups, including the SIDS and the OIC, as also provided for and agreed in the Pact for the Future. Now, some colleagues have been harping on the claim of so-called majority for a particular position. So my question is, if that were the case, what are we doing here? So let's be realistic. Flexibility is the key word here, and we have heard a lot that word this morning. Yet, there are others who remain fixated. They don't move at all while calling for negotiations. Simply put, convergences that have to be the basis for a so-called consolidated model cannot be achieved without flexibility. So, co-chairs, my delegation stands ready in the spirit of flexibility to work constructively with you and with all members in pursuit of a genuine reform. A reform for all, privileged for none. Thank you.